How did you get into marine services? Like, how did this fall into your lap?
I had somebody come out and shrink wrap my boat, and it cost a lot of money. So I figured I would just buy the equipment and do it myself. And I did that in order to offset a little bit of the expense. I just hung a shingle and just said, shrink wrapping, call me, right? There was a big boom in boating as soon as COVID hit. Everybody wanted a boat, and it was just, it just exploded.
I love how those entrepreneurial journeys sometimes are not even accidental, but just like you just started doing what you like doing on the side.
Yeah, that's kind of how it came into be. Just a bunch of things lined up and worked out.
All right. Welcome to another edition of the Superpro podcast, the heartbeat of home service excellence. I'm Roland Leitenberg, your host and co-founder of Housecall Pro. I'm an advocate for all the hardworking pros out there that help make our homes better, safer, and more comfortable. In this case, also boats. That's going to be really fun. Through Housecall Pro, I've had the privilege of supporting hundreds of thousands of pros just like you, empowering you all to achieve more, stress less, and redefine success in our industry. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Eric Yukins to the show. He's the owner of Oakland Shrink Wrap and Marine Services based out of Highland, Michigan. He's got 8 folks on his team, 3 crews that are mobile, targeting 1.5 million in revenue this year. He brings a diverse background in database implementations to the table. We may talk about that, his previous professional life, what got him into this business. We're going to dive right into his business journey and his insights and how he leverages Housecall Pro to optimize his operations. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Roland.
Hey, so tell me a little bit about, you got a really unique business. How did you get into marine services? Like, how did this fall into your lap?
Sure. Yeah. So I've always been into boating. We live in Southeast Michigan, and there's a ton of lakes around here, and I've got a few boats myself. Always have, and I really had just started doing it on the side. I've got an engineering background. I was in sales for automotive suppliers. Mm-hmm. So I would travel around the world selling heat shields, gaskets, to like Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, stuff like that, as part of employment for an automotive company and an automotive suppliers. And I just did this on the side. I had somebody come out and shrink wrap my boat, and it cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So I figured I would just buy the equipment and do it myself. And I did that in order to offset a little bit of the expense. I just hung a shingle and just said, shrink wrapping, call me, right? And this was in 2019. And so I did that in the fall, and it took off pretty well. I did about 50 jobs that season, just on my own, like after work.
And how much is a job? Just for people that aren't familiar with shrink wrapping and they think it's only for consumer packaged goods. What does it cost to shrink wrap a boat, and why do people do it?
Yeah, so it would be like around $500. You could say would be about the average ticket. Mm-hmm. 500, and then for just strictly shrink wrapping, it'd be around $500. Mm-hmm. So people do that because you can't use your boat in the wintertime in Michigan, and you have to protect it somehow. So you can either store it indoors, which costs around $1,500, mm-hmm. or you can have it shrink wrapped and leave it outside. So that seems to be
it's a good alternative there. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, good alternative. Yep. And storage space indoor storage space is increasingly more and more scarce. So that price goes up and up. Mm-hmm. So I started it as they call it a side hustle back in 2019, and then 2020 COVID came along, mm-hmm. and that stopped all my travel for work, and we did a bunch of work from home and everything. And so I was continued to do this on the side, but meanwhile I had gotten a lot more requests to do other stuff to people's boats, so that turned into storage and then more maintenance and stuff like that. And coupled with the expansion of the boating, there was a big boom in boating as soon as COVID hit. Everybody wanted a boat, and it was just, it just exploded. So it was kind of a perfect storm because I was providing good service just because I was into it, right? And so people like that, and I've always been upfront with people about what the deal is with their boat, what they need, upfront with pricing, just being upfront with people, and that seemed to kind of work out, and people valued that, and they would pay a little bit of a premium for it, right?
Sure.
And so that kind of took off, and then I had secured a space here from one of my customers. He said, why don't you just use, he had built these buildings. He said, why don't you just use one of these buildings in the fall to to shrink wrap some boats. And I was like, yeah, great. So I did that in the fall, and then he had leased a couple out, and he's like, you should just lease one of these because you're going to need it. So I did. And then around 2022 or the end of 21, I just went into doing this full time because they wanted me to go back into the office and sit around in a cubicle and do Zoom calls, not really doing much more traveling. So that really just wasn't, that wasn't for me anymore. So I just, this had kind of taken off, and had half a dozen employees under me at that time. So I just decided to make the jump. Fortunately, my wife works for General Motors. She's an engineer over there. So it's a little bit more of a cushion to, I have a cushion there, right? She's got insurance, she's got benefits, she's got a salaried income. So fortunately I could take advantage of that. If I was, 40 years old and had a couple kids and wanted to make that switch, into being an entrepreneur, that would be a little bit more risky, but I wasn't as concerned about it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it came into be. Just a bunch of things lined up and worked out,
I love how those entrepreneurial journeys sometimes are not even accidental, but just like you just started doing what you like doing on the side, something that was interesting, and all of a sudden it like turned itself into a business, and you're like, holy moly, now I got to hire people, I got to lease a space, I got to get a spot where I can actually do the boat wraps, And so somewhere along the journey, you've had to hire folks. What does it take to shrink wrap or find someone to shrink wrap a boat? Because I can probably assume like that is what people come to you for, and they're like, hey, can you like flush my engine and get it ready for spring, too? And so you probably get the flip side of the winterization, and then you get the whole rush back into the water.
Yeah, and so I had initially just wanted to focus on just shrink wrapping, just kind of keep it, just as one service, and not really branch out on that, and just and try to find some other niches where that could be applied. And we certainly do get a good amount of business from, like, because we are there's our competitors are really two groups of people. One is like a full-fledged marina where they have a lot of overhead, and they've got big buildings, and they take care of strictly boats. Or it's the guy on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace who's doing it out of the back of his truck, like I was. So there was really a kind of a gap for somebody that wanted to like a business, or an automotive supplier or something like that, who wanted to get some products shrink wrapped, or hauling companies, but needed somebody that was a legitimate business and was
professional.
Insured.
Yeah, knew what they're
professional.
doing.
Yep. So we did. That's one of the niches that we fell into, and we certainly get a lot of that business, and those they pay for it, right? They pay for somebody. They understand that all of the overhead that we have, and they can't use somebody that's outside of, Craigslist. I don't know if they still use Craigslist, but, out of Facebook Market, they can't use just a fly-by-night kind of guy. They need a professional. Right. So that worked out pretty well, but there was so much ancillary business that came with just touching somebody's boat. They're like, hey, I need, can you flush the engine? Can you store this? Or, I need to buy a dock. I need to buy a boat hoist. I can't find anybody to do that, and then it just kind of took off. So I kind of shifted the business a little bit to, I should step back a little bit. So during the fall, I would probably get like the business. There's just a huge peak for our business in the fall. So it was when I was on my own, I would talk to probably 1,000 customers in the fourth quarter. Yeah, like I would field like 1,000 calls, right?
Dang.
And so I could size somebody, and still can. I can size somebody up in the first two sentences, like what kind of customer they're going to be. So I decided to kind of focus on the customer who appreciates good service and is willing to pay for it, and it's not going to sit there and haggle you on price. If the first thing they're asking is price, or the first thing they say is, hey, the guy that used to do it's not taking care of me anymore. Well, those are kind of red flags, because if you're a good customer, the business is always going to service you, right? So I learned. So we just kind of dialed in what customers and what products and what locations we were going to focus on. And we just kind of do that. So, we would rather have 10 customers that spend $10,000 a year, than 1,000 customers that spend $10 a year, right? So, and they're valued customers. We take care of them. If they call, we pick up and we take care of them, right? And they all appreciate that. So that's kind of the niche that we were very focused on that.
I feel like
right,
that's a really subtle golden nugget that you just dropped there, which is like, in the beginning you kind of take all, but then
right,
as you started to increase your business, you get to have the pick of the litter and you're more professional and you can tell right off the bat which types of people you want to work for and which ones you don't. And I feel like in that transition period is where a lot of people try to please maybe some of the clients that they started out with that
yeah,
still want to honor some crazy lowball price that you had at the beginning, that don't understand why
right,
you actually need to charge what you need to charge to run a profitable business. And so shedding some of that is difficult, and then just saying no is difficult for any entrepreneur. I feel like, where
yeah,
it's like you feel
yeah,
like everything you do, you're like leaving money on the table, but in the reality,
right.
if you're supply constrained and you can only do so much, why not work with the ones that really appreciate your service and value your service? And those end up being your biggest evangelists, your biggest referral sources, your biggest 5-star reviews, your biggest introductions to other boat owners like them, or, homeowners, right? Boat owners, homeowners, same kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Yeah, those I would say, like, to anybody who's kind of starting off, or just anybody in general, trust your gut, right? If you think that job is going to be a problem, it's going to be. You know what I mean? And there's no sense in, basically you're walking over to a customer's house and handing them a couple $100 bills and then leaving, and then not only that, but you're going to probably get a bad review.
Mm-hmm.
And the 90, the one time out of 1,000 where that happened to work out, where you thought like, hey, maybe this is going to be a bad job, and it ends up being okay, and you basically gave it away, because you're trying to meet the cost. Well, the referral they're going to give is, hey, I went to Eric and he was so cheap, you got to call him up, and that's not what we want as a business, right? We don't want the first person to say like, we want to give a reasonable price, but reasonable price and good service, right? We don't want to be the lowest cost person out there and just fight on that, right? It just doesn't work.
That makes a lot of sense. So along this journey, you're getting 1,000 calls. I don't know what you're using before, but if you had, background in sort of like databases and ordering and suppliers, you kind of knew the value of keeping track of stuff digitally. But at what point were you like, that's enough? I need to look for something, and then you found Housecall Pro. What was that like? What was that like aha moment, and why then?
Um, so yeah, I had needed something that had been looking around for a while for something that was, like a payment processor and a scheduling app, and something like that at first, so I was using Square just for my the payment
Hmm.
processing, and they had a calendar feature on there, and I had started to use that. And there were as the business built up and it got a little bit more complex, I kind of, because I had been down this road before with setting up databases and using them and using CRM systems on a much larger scale for, Fortune 500 companies. I can see the importance of it and the value of it. So I was like, I need to get something here that's like, I can't be the only guy who needs something like this.
Yeah.
And not only that, but to measure, to see my costing, to see my expenses, to see what all my metrics are. So I needed like an all-in-one solution. So I went around and I looked at a bunch of different software and stuff like that. And I came to the realization that I wasn't going to find something that was like out of the box fit for my use, so I had to kind of go in and tailor something, which is usually the case anyways. SAP is a huge software platform that,
Yeah.
Thousands of companies use, they have billions of dollars in sales, but you have to still tailor that to each business,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So that I wasn't too afraid of that, but I did want something that was convenient to use, and that I could, kind of onboard, and that was kind of used to like scheduling and mobile work, because a lot of our jobs are mobile.
Yep.
And what I really wanted was something that could, where you could see the schedule, the day's schedule, you could see the customer, and then it would also integrate with the payments and the job and stuff like that. And I didn't really, the features that Housecall Pro provides, I didn't really appreciate it as much as I do now at first, because it was kind of checking off some of the boxes that I needed, but also starting off, you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So going down the road, it was, I can see now that other features that they have are very valuable, and I would have probably set things up a little bit differently in Housecall if I could take if I could step back a little bit and dial it in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's and then on a similar note, Housecall Pro has continued to improve. It was, when I think we've been on it. Well, you can probably see. I think we've been on it like 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah, three years almost.
Yeah. So it's changed quite a bit. You guys have continued to improve on it, and there's a lot of features that keep getting added based on the feedback that people give.
That's right.
The community that Housecall Pro has. I'm not a big Facebook guy, but I probably use it more for the Housecall Pro groups than anything. And the chances are people are kind of thinking the same thing that I am on Facebook, and you can go there and research that, or if not, you just make a post and people respond. So it's got a very good community too. I can't say enough good things about that. So that's pretty valuable.
Yeah. And so I think, for a lot of businesses, sometimes they're used to running a sort of a process one way, and then you come to software and you're like, oh, it doesn't quite run that process the way that I do, but I can kind of see it there. What did you have to do for your business? Because it's a little bit different than like our typical, maybe a mechanical pro that we have, or like a cleaning pro, but there's so many similarities. How did you feel that was? And do you feel like people should always keep their process the same? And try to get the software to do it? Or was there like a little bit of augmentation and you kind of, did it a little differently to make it work within the boundaries?
So that's a good question and a tough question, because it's you want to be able to change your process to fit the software, but you also want to change the software to fit your process. So there's a little bit of both. But when you're starting that off, you don't know what the features and limitations are of the software, because you just haven't had a full business cycle yet. So
right.
I would encourage anybody who's just getting into Housecall Pro to find somebody who has a similar business. And I would encourage you guys to maybe even go ahead and kind of set that up, or with your salespeople or something.
Yeah.
If they can talk to somebody who's good about, if I had somebody in the same business, I would tell them how to set it up, and they would be dialed in from day one. You know what I mean? And it would be worth its weight in gold, right? Because even the things like in setting up the services, even the categories,
right? The price
all
book.
of the little details, the price book, all of that stuff, and not to mention as you get further dialed in and the software, how you set up your costing, right? How you set up your employees, how you set up the pay, all of that stuff. So where that really comes back to get you then is at the end of the year when you go ahead and do your reporting. If you don't have good data in, you're not going to have good data out. And you're always going to, so that first year is kind of like you kind of figure out your process, the company's process and Housecall Pro's process. And it's kind of a big learning experience, I would imagine, for most people who have a unique situation. So you have to do a little bit of both. And I would think that it would probably, looking back a little bit now, and I might even do it now that we're having this conversation, it's almost like you should tear the Band-Aid off fast and start over and redo everything the way it should have been, or in the ideal way. And I think we're probably at a point on that where we probably should do that, because we can get again, coming back to the reporting and everything, and then the process, there's a lot of little tricks that we could, all of that stuff. Yep. And then how it looks in reporting, and what which ones we use, which ones we don't. So I don't think that you have to do a little bit of both. You have to be, I think you have to be willing to adapt on it. And then you have to know that stuff's going to change, and you're going to learn your business, and you're going to learn the software, and you've got to be able to dial both of those in. And then, I guess just keep growing with it, Yeah. I think like I said, it's a very good and tough question.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's great advice. I think there's no comfort in growth, and so I feel like you're always going to kind of feel like, oh, I could be doing better, but not quite there. But that's when you know that you're in a good place, because you perpetually have that learning mindset where you're like, oh, now everything that I know now, if I were to redo it, this is exactly how I would set it up. And I feel like, that happens with a lot of people with life, right? Not just a field service management, not just with your business, but oh man, if I only knew that when I was 30, I wouldn't have done that, dumb knuckle thing, whatever I did.
Right.
I would have done it differently. But I feel like that's really good advice, especially for people that are first starting to get in. I think the other golden nugget that you shared, which was super powerful, which is like find someone that does the business that you do and just ask them, how are you doing it, man? Like,
Right.
how'd you got it
Yeah.
set up? Because they probably stumbled into the same things and made a couple of mistakes. And I feel like this is valuable life advice, not just like about Housecall Pro, but like, find someone
Yeah.
a few steps ahead, maybe a mentor, someone in a similar space. Ask them, be open. Like, hey, I'm looking to learn. Do you have anything you can share with me? I think, there's so much business just in general. Even if you find an HVAC person in your same area, or a plumber in your same area, or a shrink wrap person on the same lake, like there's
Yeah.
so many boats. And you never know when that's going to come back to help you down the road too.
Right. Yeah. And it's always good to, reaching out to other business owners. At first, I was a little reluctant because I thought like, oh, they're competitors. They're not going to want to share this stuff. Nobody cares. You're almost like colleagues, because when you get off and running your own show, you're on such a silo. You know what I mean? You don't have colleagues that you go into to work with, and you're all working for the same company, and there's thousands of you, and then dozens in your department. You're
Right.
all kind of rowing in the same direction. It's not like that as a business owner, right? You're on your own silo, but there's what the camaraderie is that every other business owner is in the same boat you are. And there's enough, if you're I think pretty much any business out there nowadays, there's enough business to go around, right?
Yeah.
So other business owners are happy to kind of share with you. If not, then you got to find another one to talk to. But,
Yeah.
if you call them up and they're 9 times out of 10, they'll be willing to share, and because they learn too, right? And then they can, you can kind of feed off each other, and you build a relationship, and you can get more business. They can get more business. I would just say that when you find somebody, in life, in general, if you find somebody that's got it figured out, that that knows what they've been doing it for a long time, don't be afraid to just copy it, right? Like they've got it figured out. Like you don't need to reinvent that wheel. If they can take care of a category for you, and they know what they're doing. They've got it figured out. Just do exactly what they say. There's no shame in just, set that one. There's enough going on in life where you can just set that bucket aside. It's full. You're good. Move on.
Yeah, yeah. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and don't be afraid.
Yeah.
I love that golden nugget. It's like you don't need to like do it some other way because there's some other better way. If someone spent some time to figure it out and they're successful, go spend your time on something else that will yield you much more
Yep.
leverage, in the long term
Yep.
than trying to figure out something that's already been figured out. It's just you gotta move on, and I think sometimes as owners, you really want to perfect things and have this like shiny, perfect little thing, but it's like you got to be
Right.
okay with like, yep, that works. I got bigger fish to fry. You can't
Right.
put out all fires all at once everywhere. You kind of got to let some burn a little bit. And if they're small enough and they're
Yep.
contained, who cares? Move on to that like big blaze over there, because you'll
Yeah.
probably get a lot more. Either you'll save costs, or you're going to fix, employees wasting hours on some other task that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing. That's super glaring, but you're just focused on a small little thing when, you got this big thing over here.
Yeah. So there's also like the, sorry to interrupt you. There's also like, you have a good point there. It's like when probably myself and probably a lot of other business owners, there's a difference between being a technician and being a business owner, right? So in a lot of business, including myself, a lot of businesses start from being a technician, and you're really good at that, and you want to do that work, and you want to continue to do that. Well, that's not your role. If you're the business owner, you have to, your role is to own the business and to steer that ship, not to really do the technical work, right? Because if you have other people that are depending on you, you have other families that are depending on your business, your job is to run the business, not to do the work.
Yep.
Yeah, or it's other work, right? It's not to do the technical work. So that's kind of tough to figure out at first.
How do you
too.
overcome that? Because you probably got really freaking good at shrink wrapping boats, and then you probably hired someone, and they probably missed, the back seat, or I don't know, I'm making it up, but like, they probably did it to like 90% of what you did, and like, how do you shed that feeling of control? Because I think that's really hard for people.
It's extremely tough to do. I have so I had asked one of my customers and a friend like what because he has an HVAC company that I said, he's got maybe 100 guys working for him. I said, how do you do that? Like what's the deal? And he said, there's this book. It's called E-Myth, and he said, go read this book. And he's like, that's the best advice I can give you. And I read it. It's like E-MYTH. as I read it, like you could see, like with like word for word, like experience for experience, what was going on in my business. You know, that was like the first third of the book. Then the second third was like, hey, if you keep doing that, if you keep playing this technician role, here's where you're going to end up. You're going to end up out of business because you want to keep control of that. You want to, you know, if you can do it, just because you can do it better or quicker or your way doesn't mean you should be, right? Again, because it's not your role. Your role is a business owner, not the technician. So you've got to get out of that role. And that book has been great. And there's, you know, there was a class and like a coach that I've hired through that organization that has really helped that out too. So because, you know, I am an engineer through education and stuff, but that took a long time. You know, you had to go to school to figure out how to be an engineer. You know, that took tens of thousands of dollars, 4 years time, to figure that out. And then a bunch of, you know, professional work. So nothing happens overnight. And if the stakes are as high as you owning your own business and being responsible to make money and to pay people, you have to get it right. So you have to kind of reach out and you know, not be afraid to spend some money on some training or on some coaching and on some software and the right tools to do the job, you know. So it's all about training and, you know, research and, you know, tools.
Yeah,
so
I think part of that is like just being able to delegate and then trust your people and then being able to focus on the big picture, you know, because you're the entrepreneur. Yeah, you might have been a really good technician in the past, and probably you still are, you know, but the reality is there's way fewer entrepreneurs than there are technicians or managers. The managers really are the folks that just take the process that you come up with and make sure that the technicians are doing it. And so, you know, having that 3 levels, you know, Michael Gerber does a really good job at outlining that book, and he's got a couple different editions too. If you're in the HVAC trade, he's got like an HVAC version, but there's like the general book. But I think that's a really good one for folks that are looking for some other place to learn other than just listening to this podcast. Go read this book. It's super good.
It really is good.
It's very difficult to kind of overcome some of those obstacles, especially if you're coming from that technician mindset, which many folks are, you know, which many folks start up, just like you said.
Yep. So then if you like instill in your people, like the beliefs that you have and, you know, how it's more of a mindset, right? That you're going to train. It's not really necessarily sure, there are some technical details that you want to be sure that they have. And that comes a little bit from hiring. But again, you know, nobody knows everything when you hire them. If you had that right guy, then you would, then great. They do come along. But as long as they're doing things, you know, going back to, when I first started and how we got more business. And that was just from treating people right, from being upfront with people, being honest with them, showing up on time. If you can't, then you call them. You know, you got to communicate, and you know, do what you say you're going to do. And that's really kind of about it. And then instill that in the people, right? Instill the mindset, not really the technical details as much.
Yeah, and I think like so many problems just come from mismatched expectations, either between yourself and an employee or your employee and the end customer. And the difference between those expectations is like the size of the problem that you're going to have to face. But through communication, you can hopefully get those expectations closer to one another so that irrespective of technical skill or those things, you've got a good ground to be able to do good business. And I think if you're trying to build a scalable long-term business, you have to be able to do that both as a leader and still on your employees, and then allow those employees to have those expectation setting conversations with the homeowners as well. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, so one of the things as expectations of having people is making sure they're spending money in the right places, and tracking the things that they're spending and making sure that the jobs that you're doing, particularly if it's parts heavy, you know, if there's componentry and things like that you have to order, that all those are managed. Tell me a little bit about how you guys use Housecall Pro expense cards and kind of how that all kind of fits into your business.
Yeah. So the expense cards are great because you know, again, Housecall Pro is nice because it integrates so much stuff, right? And we don't take advantage of everything that is there to offer. You know, we don't do the payroll or the websites or anything like that quite yet, just because we just haven't gotten around to it, right? But the expense cards, I mean, it's super easy, right? So you can it's one of the first things we do is order an expense card for our guys. It's free. they just show up like in a week or something like that. The card shows up. It comes, it's basically like a prepaid card, right? You add funds to it, and they can come off of the job or they can come out of your bank account, however you want it set up. But you're basically loading these cards, and there's one big kitty, and each person is allocated. You can control the spend on it, whether it's per transaction, per day, per week. You can activate it or not activate it. You turn it on and off. It's all in the app, right?
Yep.
So it's super easy to do, and then you can have they can upload the receipt to it as well. So it would be I wish that you could kind of categorize you could categorize that expense right there, when they're uploading that receipt. But I mean it's everything's there's a wish list for everything, right? But it's nice these guys have these cards and you can turn it on and off if they lose it or something, or if something comes. I think we set ours to like $250 a week for the guys. But if all of a sudden something happened and they needed $1,000, we could just turn it on instantly, and they could they would have access to those funds. But we wanted them to be able to not be slowed down, not have to come back to the shop for say they need a box of screws and they're 20 miles away. Well, I don't want them to come back to the shop for a box of screws. I want them to go to a local hardware store and buy it, right? And just figure that out. And everybody's been, or gasoline, right? If they need to fill up the tank or, whatever. It's just good to have them be able to use their own card, and that's not their own money. You have to get reimbursed for it or anything like that. So it's super easy. It makes the guys feel good because they've got a card there. They feel like it's a credit card that they can, that they've got a little bit of a safety net there when they go out. So it's really helpful from a business owner's side. Then we can see all the transactions. We haven't had anybody take advantage of it or anything like that. And there's safeguards in place there where you can kind of, like I said, you can kind of dial in how much can be spent. You can turn them. Guys have lost the cards. We just turn it off instantly.
Yep.
So it's super easy, super convenient. I don't have enough good things to say. We can't say enough good things about it. It's just really convenient.
Yeah, I think these are small little things that you don't really think about, even initially when you get Housecall Pro, because you don't even think about expense cards. You're just trying to think like, hey, can I get things on the calendar and can I get paid for my invoices? But as you're dialing in your business, those small trips, to go and running back to the shop, and if you're in places where you got to go all the way around the lake, the long side, and then back, that's an hour of travel time, an hour of gas. I mean, thing that costs you $150 versus if you just had that expense card, you could have told them to use their own card, but let's say they did that. They did their own card, then they lose the receipt, and then you got to find a way to give them the dollars. Where do you give them the dollars? And then how do you track that thing? Boom, you spend an hour of your time. That's another $150 or whatever you value your time at, and so those little things, I mean, those micro things, you do 1,000 of those things and 1,000 boats. I mean, there you go. That's like $100K worth of just lost time that you could have spent growing the business.
The cards are super. I would recommend everybody, if you don't have any type of card system for your guys, or if each one of your employees is not walking around with a card, then you should definitely get it.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no reason not to.
Yeah, and like Eric said, you can dial it in depending. If you got someone that spends a little more, just dial their card down. You can limit. You can limit. You spend. You can limit all kinds of stuff. So all the controls are in there to make sure that you don't have to worry so much. And you've been using Housecall Pro now for 3 years. What do you think is the most underrated feature? What do you think doesn't get talked about enough, or isn't even really a feature, but it's super underrated and you're surprised you don't hear it more, or something that someone should take a look at if they're listening to this?
The most underrated feature, I do, I haven't dialed it in as much, probably because a lot of people don't talk about it, but the material usage on there. So when you set your materials and you can kind of track how much material you've used, I'm always looking for more from that, and I don't see a lot of people talking about that as much. But I guess there's a couple of ways that you can define how much material you're using on a job. And I don't care if you're an electrician, you're an HVAC guy, you cut lawns, or you work on boats. You use material. Mm-hmm. And it would be good to see how much material it's always good to see how much material you're using on specific jobs. Anybody can figure out how much you use at the end of the year, but kind of, right, based on your receipts, but
Yep.
you still would like to know, I like to dial it in a little bit more and see like where there's, where certain savings are. And, if we could, because we have like this part of wrapping a boat is you have to use the strapping, which would be similar to an electrician using wiring, or a plumber using pipe or something like that. So we had like three different thicknesses of strapping that we would use, and we'd have to have three different SKUs, and then tracking all of that. One of the SKUs was, we just didn't use that much, but we still had it in the truck. We had to carry it around and all this and that. And then there were certain buckles that were associated with it. But when I was looking at it in Housecall, I saw that the usage of it, and I was like, well, why don't we just use one strapping? Just go to this middle size, and let's just stick with that. And then it just kind of streamlined everything and made everything a little bit easier. So you can kind of see your material usage per job, and actually, on a smaller scale than you would if you're just looking at your receipts or from your supplier invoices,
Right. At the end of the year, when you're looking at your P&L, or your tax person closes the books, and you're like, "Oh, what's that line item?" Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I think these are all maybe like micro optimizations that in the long run add up to a lot, because it's just simplicity. It's less things to remember, less things on the truck, less things I have to order, less SKUs to deal with, and those things, even if you're spending a little bit more on, more medium-sized strap in this case,
right?
You might lose a little bit here, but then you gain in efficiency in so many other places. It like offsets it times 10, and it might not be apparent unless you're looking at, the materials on a per job basis.
Right. I feel like another underutilized thing is the gosh, I'm spacing on it right now, but it's the not the product ID. It's the, what is it called when you have the property profile?
Oh, property profiles. Yep. Uh-huh.
The property profile. Yeah. I feel, because again, I don't care what your business is. You're servicing property. If you're an HVAC, you're putting in ductwork, you're putting in an AC unit. You're an electrician, you're putting in, lights, whatever.
Yep.
Who knows what it is? Lawn care guy, you're cutting the lawn. So we have boats and we have engines. And it's good to have that property profile filled out, so that you're not always asking, hey, what kind of boat do they have? So it's always in there. So that's good. And then you can also see what service was done with it.
Right.
In that property profile, you can see which ones are attached to it. So I think that's really useful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for sure for your guys' services, because people might have multiple boats. I think if people buy one boat, usually they have like multiple craft. They might have their jet skis plus their main boat, and then they got the pontoon for like when the whole family comes to visit or whatever. And those get serviced at different intervals, different rates, get used at different times. But there's no different, like you said, to someone that installs, tankless water heaters, and maybe they've got one on each floor, or there's multiple HVAC units, on a building, because you got one for the first floor and one for the second floor. That's great.
Sorry to interrupt you. One thing that we do, and that could probably apply to a lot of other businesses, is that when we sell or service something in that property profile, we'll have, we'll put the serial number in there, we'll put the basic data in there, but then also like in the attachments, we put, like a service manual, a picture of the receipt of when we bought it, any kind of info that's associated with that particular item, we're going to throw in that bucket with the property profile so that it's always there, right?
Yeah. Regardless of who's looking at it, they can see it.
Yeah. So if there's, if we find it's nice too, because you can attach more than just pictures. You can attach PDFs, you can attach zip files, you can attach a lot of stuff to it. And so we'll, like if they were repairing an engine and there was the repair manual, I'll attach it to there, or I'll paste the link in there where to get it. So then it's always in one spot, because I do find that people, there's a lot of money and time spent in researching stuff. And if you've already got that, why reinvent the wheel, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's another micro action that's going to save a lot of time. If people, sure, you can Google things, sure, you can ChatGPT stuff, but like, why do that if you already have it? And you found it once, like, just save it. Take that extra, whatever it is, 5 seconds to upload it. Boom, you're done. You don't have to think about it again.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because most things in Housecall Pro, it's so easy to use for the technicians and for the business owner. It takes 5 seconds to upload a picture. It takes 5 seconds to, say on my way. It saves 5 seconds to click start and finish on the job and stuff like that. And then if they don't take those 5 seconds to do that, your job, because a business owner, becomes extremely difficult. Like if I wanted to see how many hours were spent on a specific job, even a week ago, right? I forget what I did yesterday. But if I wanted to see how long a job took last week, I have to do some, I'm looking at the security cameras, trying to figure out, hours of,
When'd you come in? When'd you leave?
Yeah. How long? And it's not like I'm trying to track the guys. I'm just trying to know the metrics of the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
that makes sense.
So you can like drill into your guys, early on to, hey, this is important. Be sure to click into the job and stuff like that.
It was
easier for everybody.
It was part about what you said that earlier too, which is like good data in gets you good data out.
Yeah.
And so, you got to make sure those processes are dialed in early on, because otherwise, you're going to get bad data in, and don't be surprised if you don't get the reports you're looking for and you got to do much stuff manually. Don't you want, the software only knows what the software knows. So you got to have the inputs right. That's totally right.
Yep.
Wow. These podcasts normally last like 20 to 30 minutes. We're well into 40, and I feel like you've shared so much valuable advice. What's something maybe that you would tell like younger Eric, someone maybe even pre-shrink wrap business Eric? What's some piece of advice that you think might resonate with some of our audience?
Again, I would say that spend way more time talking to other business owners that are in the same case as you. Take them out to lunch. Just go visit them at their office. Just stop in and talk to them. They're going to share info with you. They really are. And even like if they're thinking about, I forget who the lady was that I signed up through Housecall Pro with, but I should have asked her to talk to other business owners about it. Should ask her for the phone number about it, because there's certainly nothing wrong with the software, but it's just setting it all up, and getting that advice from other business owners is just invaluable.
I almost feel like we got
that time.
We got to take that feedback from you and do something where like we introduce each new customer with like an existing Superpro, just like, hey, if you need someone to call, you need like someone to talk to, boom, like talk to one of our Superpros, for sure. Yeah. That's a great idea.
I've seen people ask about it in the Superpro Facebook group, but I feel like at that point they've already dove in. They're already there, right? They're using it, But it would have to come like at an initial level with the salespeople, and it could only benefit everybody, right? It benefits Housecall Pro because you're getting users that are right on board and dialed in. The guy who's sharing the info, every time you go ahead and teach something, you learn more. Right.
Yeah. Totally.
And then the other business owner is figuring out how to get it all set up, So it's a lot of the little details that you just don't think of, that are really, really important down the road.
Yeah. Well, this has been super insightful. Thank you for spending this much time sharing so much of your wisdom and all the learnings. And it's really fun seeing different types of trades, verticals, industries using the software in ways that, I don't know, when we started the business almost 11 years ago, we never thought, we'd have a shrink wrap business that does boats up in Michigan and just dominates the market using the software, and so it's really, really cool to see. And for anyone else that's listening, if you're looking to get in the shrink wrap business or the marine services space, feel free to reach out to Eric. I'm sure he'd take your call. Just call up his business. Because, like you said, find other people, find other business owners. They're happy to share. And Eric, thank you again so much for jumping on the show.
Thanks, Roland. Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right. We'll catch you guys next week for another episode of the Superpro podcast. See you all later.
Thanks.
The Superpro podcast is brought to you by Housecall Pro, the leading platform for the home service industry. Housecall Pro streamlines your workflows and simplifies everything from scheduling and dispatching to communication and billing. Unlock the full potential of your home service business with Housecall Pro. Work smarter and more efficiently with streamlined workflows and detailed analytics. Win more business and serve your customers well, every single time. Join more than 40,000 home service pros who have already revolutionized their businesses. Work smarter with streamlined workflows, get organized with centralized information, and scale your business your way. Learn more at housecallpro.com.